It destroyed or damaged buildings about a quarter mile into the base, and I spit, and it's blood. This is about my worst day in Afghanistan. A lot of you are green suiters, and a lot of you have dealt with way worse things than I have. And first off, I want to say thank you to most of you out there. So the last video I uploaded, I was a little nervous about it. I didn't know how the critics of YouTube would receive me telling a very personal story and long story about me escaping from my Afghan employers in Kabul. And while there's a few hecklers and trolls out there, most of you overwhelmingly, surprisingly, were really positive and really supportive. So thank you guys. And I hear you. Apparently y'all really like hearing stories about crazy stuff that happened in Afghanistan, hearing some of my old stories. So I'm going to give you another one. And this one, this is about my worst day in Afghanistan. And this is probably the day that, and I, like a lot of you out there, I'm dealing with a little PTSD. This is probably the day that it started. So the year's 2012. I'm back in Shank, that same base from that previous story, but this time I'm working for a much more legitimate, like major defense contractor. And I've been out there for a while. Everything's going fine, other than it's Afghanistan. And one day something happens that puts us all on edge, and that's one of the smaller bases near us gets hit with a VBIED, which is a military acronym for vehicle borne improvised thing that goes boom. So this base gets hit with a VBIED, but it's not a normal VBIED. It's huge, and it flattens every building on the base. It's terrible. So this was Salerno, if I remember right. So when that base got hit, all of us at Shank, we know that the Afghans, the Taliban, they're crazy and they're fanatical, right? But not all of them are stupid. And when they do something that works really well, they're going to do it again and again until we figure out a way to stop it. So when this happened at that base, all of us were like, oh, that sucks. I wonder how long until they try that here. So we're all a little on edge, and we're just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then one day, 4 septic trucks get stolen. Now these are septic trucks that they come onto base and they pump out our porta-johns and stuff like that, and then they drive off base and dump it who knows where, in some farmer's field, or their drinking water or river or whatever. So they dump it somewhere. And one day when they're off base, they get stolen. And we're like, oh, really? It's going to be a septic truck bomb? Like, So a few more days pass. It's mid-morning, August 7th. I think it was August 7th. And I'm sitting in the office talking to my friend Abe. And I'm mid-sentence. I'm talking, right like this now. And all of a sudden, everything is in the air. Everything is just airborne. All the books, all the papers, tools, pencils, pens, everything is flying through the air. And I'm looking at Abe, we're making eye contact, and we're both just like, what? So we both hit the deck. Our training kicks in, we lay on the floor, we count to 5, basically waiting to make sure there's whatever this was, that there's not another one. And I don't know about Abe, but I'm thinking, okay, maybe this was indirect fire. Maybe this was a mortar or a rocket hit the next room or something. And I don't, I had the presence of mind to know that, I might be in shock. And so I'm kind of checking myself out to make sure, are there holes in my body, right? Am I hurt and I don't even feel it yet? I seem to be all right. Checking out Abe, he seems to be all right. We hop up and we head for the door. Everyone does their speed walk for the bunker. So we all make this beeline for the bunker, and we throw open the door. And when we open the door to the building, that's the moment we realize this is something different from the typical IDF that we're used to. So we open the door, and you can't see your hand in front of your face. The dust is so thick, I can't see my hand in front of my face, right? So I'm like, that's weird. That's, I'm not used to this. So we feel our way to the bunker. We get inside, and we're all shaken up. We've all got radios that are on the channel for our company, and there's nothing on that radio. But we're in there with a bunch of soldiers, and the soldiers' radios have a lot of chatter. And over time, we pick up that this was a VBIED. This was, in fact, it was the septic truck. Right? We learned that later, but yeah, it was a massive VBIED, and it didn't even try to get inside the base. It just went off outside, and the goal was to destroy the perimeter of the base and allow a bunch of Taliban to come running in. So their septic truck bomb was bigger than they had expected, right? So some of the guys waiting outside to come running in through the hole they made in the perimeter got wiped out by it, and the others were really disoriented. And we're sitting there in the bunkers, and we can hear shooting. We can hear firefights, the wrong word. It sounded pretty one-sided. And some time goes by, and then our radios come to life, and we hear this call on our radios saying, electricians, everyone up to the medical tent. You're all needed at the medical tent immediately. And a couple people get up, and the rest of us are kind of hesitating a moment, and the soldiers that are in the bunker with us tell us flat out, you step outside this bunker, you're going to get shot. You're going to get shot, and you're going to get shot by our own guys. So you still couldn't see. The air is still filled with dust. Someone had called us to the medical tent to basically put their electrical system back together because it had been destroyed in the blast, and they're in triage mode, right? And the problem was, I think it's special forces, was still outside mopping up the guys that had come running inside. And because you can't see, and because nobody like us, no civilians, are supposed to be running around outside trying to get from point A to point B, we're all supposed to be inside the bunkers. If we're out there making our way across the base, we are really likely to get shot. And so there was one electrician in the bunker with us that really good guy, really brave. This guy named Albert, or Alberto, I think it was Albert. And he's a Latino guy, huge, big guy from New Mexico, I believe. If you squint and you're looking through the dust, this guy looked like a giant Afghan. Albert decided he was going to go for it. A lot of heart on that guy, and not afraid of anything. So he went for it. He actually made it. I'm surprised that he didn't get shot trying to get up to the medic. So he ran up there. The rest of us listened to the soldiers that we were with, and we're like, yeah, it's not going to help anyone if we get shot on our way up there. So we waited. Time was ticking by really slow. I think my sense of time was really distorted, but I think it was about 45 minutes or so before they finally clear us to run up to the medics and basically do our electrical triage on the building so that they can do their medical triage. So we get up there, and man, it's quite a scene in that building. The medical tent it's made out of 2x4s with like a canvas tarp stretched over it. It's basically a big wood and canvas tent, and it was in bad shape. A lot of the 2x4s had snapped in the blast of this VBIED. So the lights have fallen down. They're hanging down all over the place. There's portions of the electrical system that have to be cut out so that circuit breakers will stay on. And it's, like I said, it's electrical triage. And so we proceed to get to work. And we are stepping over soldiers on the floor. The floor is just covered with all these soldiers that are passed out. And, we're positioning our ladders over them and just doing what we can to get this place functional again. And so, we do what we have to do. We get the building working again so that the medics and doctors can get to work. And we pack up our tools and we walk out of that building, and at least for me, my adrenaline crashes. My adrenaline crashes, and I can finally start to feel my body and 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 take account of what's happening to me. And in that moment, I notice I've got a funny taste in my mouth. Like, what's that? And I spit, and it's blood. And at first I'm thinking, okay, well, I've breathed a ton of dust. Like, it's probably my sinuses are bleeding from breathing dust. So I spit again, and it's the same. And again, it's the same. And again, it's the same. And I'm with a couple other of my coworkers, and they're like, dude, you're not okay. And I'm scared. I don't know what it is. Like, am I bleeding somewhere internally? What's going on? Right? It's like, why am I spitting up blood? So, I feel okay, but I can taste it now, and I feel a little sick. Like, I feel like maybe I've swallowed a lot of blood. I'm not sure, but I think it was Albert once again that is like, dude, we got to get you back to the medic. And we weren't supposed to, as like contractors, we're not supposed to go up to that medic unless it is life or death, right? Like, if you're gonna die or lose a limb, you're allowed to see them. But anything short of that, you got to go to the company medics, who are not particularly useful. Their job is really just to protect the company, and if they can't put a band-aid on it, they fly you to Dubai. So that didn't seem like a reasonable option, and so I got talked into going back to the medic. Cruised back up there, and they were really cool. It's a lot of the time the relationship between the soldiers and the contractors wasn't that great, but in an event like this, the attitude changed, and we're all in the same bunker together. We're in it together. And so they treated me like one of their own, and pulled me into this back room. And I remember feeling guilty being there with whatever little injury it was that I had, because I'm looking around at all these soldiers laying on the floor. And then I go into this back room, and I see, it was an Afghan guy, but I see a guy who didn't make it. Most of his head didn't make it. So, I'm thinking to myself, these doctors have better things to do right now than whatever, stupid thing it is that I'm dealing with. But I'm also scared. So, this doctor, he's real cool. He looks me over, he's looking in my mouth, and he's confused. He says, you've got a big cut on your tongue. You've split your tongue, but it's way back. It's not like I would understand if it was in the front, like, okay, in the blast you bit your tongue, but it's too far back. You couldn't have bit it there. So he had no idea. And I to this day, I have no idea how I split my tongue open way back there. I have two theories, and one, the most probable, is it was just the shock wave. It was the blast. Like, I was in the middle of talking to someone, and that force of that blast literally split my tongue open. I don't know. Or in the middle of talking to my friend Abe, maybe something flew in my mouth and I didn't notice, because how are you going to notice that in the middle of everything flying off the shelves? So I never figured it out. But this doctor glued my tongue shut, right? He just glued it shut, and I went on my way. And thank you to the medics at Shank and the doctors at Shank for taking care of me. And the miracle was that other than the Afghans, like, nobody died. At least that's what the military has said. Of course, the military said nobody died, including the Afghans, but they don't really count them. I don't know for sure. You go back and you look at some of those buildings, like a few days later. If none of our guys died, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. There were buildings that were like shipping containers that were just completely crumpled and full of holes, and all the tents. Basically, it destroyed or damaged buildings about a quarter mile into the base. And I've got two friends, two guys I know, Jason and Tristan. These guys both broke their necks, literally, in that blast. A lot of people were never the same after that, and I'm quite sure that I was never the same after that day, both from the things I saw and this feeling of guilt, I guess, that, like I came through all right, but some of my buddies still to this day are dealing with it and they're not the same. And yeah, that was the VBIED, August 7th, 2012 in Shank. The next day was when it really hit me how messed up we all were. The next day, there was another big truck circling the base, and word spread really fast. And all of us contractors ran or jumped in our trucks and like went to the other side of the base and hung out there. And we watched as this truck, circled the perimeter and then turned the corner and circled the other side. And we all like ran to the far side to get away from that. Like we thought it was another attack. We thought this was another truck about to do the same with an even bigger VBIED. So that was how shooken up we all were. That was our state of mind. And I made the decision in that moment that I was going home, that I was done. Contracting is addictive. The lifestyle is addictive. And it's hard to come back to the real world after something like that. So I came home, but man, I've been back a couple other times since. I keep going back. But I took a couple years. I took a few years, more than a few years, almost 5 years after that before I set foot back in Afghanistan, just to assess what was going on with me and calm down and get myself back into a headspace where I could go back into that environment without being a liability. That's my worst day. That's it. Oh, this video is almost as long. It is as long as the last one. That was the VBIED. That was the VBIED in Shank. I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope stories like this help other people. I know a lot of you are green suiters, and a lot of you have dealt with way worse things than I have. And I have this idea, this feeling that stories like mine that deal with like a moment that gives you a little bit of PTSD, but it's not too extreme. I hope and I think maybe they help you guys just a little bit. Like it's not too awful, it's not too terrible, but it's close enough that it helps you kind of step back and think about the stuff that you've been through and get yourself ready to talk about it as well. I hope I'm not being too like just ridiculous in that, but I hope this story helps some people. I think telling it definitely helps me a little bit.